Next, I'd like to invite our keynote speaker, Mr. Dale Hall, to the stage. Dale is the Chief Executive Officer of Ducks Unlimited Incorporated, America's leading wetlands and waterfowl conservation group. Hall joined the 80-year-old conservation organization in May 2010, bringing with him a vast expanse of conservation knowledge and experience. In addition to owning his own natural resources consulting company, Hall spent more than 30 years with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, with the last 3 as its director appointed by President George W. Bush. He previously served in capacities with the Fish and Wildlife Service, such as Regional Director for the Southwest Region in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Deputy Assistant Director for Fisheries in Washington, D.C. Please help me welcome Mr. Dale Hall.
Thank you, and good morning. What a great day in Texas. You know, Jeremy and I were talking before we got started, and as soon as we realized that here's 2 hillbillies from one side of the mountain, we immediately stopped. Because in eastern Kentucky, family trees don't fork much. And we needed probably to keep a little distance and safety in there, because we may be cousins. But I do want to thank you for being here and allowing me to speak this morning. As I sat here and listened to the video that was done a while ago, I just wanted to get up here and say ditto, because there's so many similarities between what you have gone through and how you've developed and how we at Ducks Unlimited developed as we went through our career as it was in our growing period. Our mission at Ducks Unlimited, many of you have seen this before, it's to restore and manage wetlands and associated habitats for North America's waterfowl. So how did this get started is a good story for all of us because you're part of it. But it got started back in the 1800s, actually, with Theodore Roosevelt, when he noticed, and others noticed, that the bison and other species were being slaughtered out west, and commercial hunting was really taking a toll on nature. And those of us that love conservation know that we never want to take more from Mother Nature than she can give us, and that we can replenish and put back. And so the big movement started with sport hunters starting to step in and stop commercial hunting. Back in the early days, in ducks, for example, they would fill train cars full of ducks and take them to market in Chicago and New York and St. Louis, to the different markets there to supply the restaurants. Literally far, far more than we could sustain on a long-term basis. So it was the sport hunter that stood up and decided, no, this can't keep going. These are our resources, we own them, and we need to take care of them. And as you all know, sport hunting has always been part of the agricultural community. So you were there, you were part of it. Your predecessors helped us make this happen. But we need to remember this, and as I go through here and talk, remember, conservation in this country is literally less than or right at 100 years old. And when we think about history and time scale, 100 years is just a blip in time. So it is imperative that we stay on focus. It is imperative that we do the things that Brent and Jeremy were talking about, and keeping young people coming in and keeping the message going, because we could easily be a footnote in history 100 years from now. Conservation could have been that thing that happened, but nobody really knows about it. It's our role to make sure it stays alive. So we do other things as well, and I want you to pay attention to this mission. Our mission statement and our vision is to have wetlands sufficient to fill the skies with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever. And everyone reads the last part. I want you to go to the first 3 words, because the first 3 words are who we are. I would ask how many in here, honestly, think that Ducks Unlimited is a duck hunting organization? Come on, be honest. A lot of people believe that we're in it for hunting. We do, because we like, just like the vineyarder likes to drink a little bit of his wine, we like to enjoy some of the fruits of our labor, but we're in it for those first 3 words. wetlands sufficient, and habitat, the grasslands as well. So how did we get started? We were started, as you were, in the Great Depression. I want you to think about this. Go back with me just a second and be in 1929, 1930, 31, 32, 33. Banks closed. People could not get their money. If they had money, they put it in the corn crib, under the floorboard of their house, or kept it in a coffee can hidden away somewhere because they could not get it from the banks. They were in a hard time. At the same time, we had the Dust Bowl come in, literally blowing the habitat away, literally making things happen. In 1934, and a remarkable thing happened. Duck hunters stood up in the midst of all of this, the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and said, "We want you to tax us." Now, I want you to think about those words, especially here in Texas. I want you to think about the words, "We want you to tax us." We want you to make us pay $1 to go hunting next year when we've never had to pay anything to the federal government to go hunting before. But we want that $1 to go on the ground to habitat. And in 1934, the Migratory Bird Conservation, Hunting and Conservation Stamp Act was passed. We know it as the duck stamp. And you must buy that duck stamp if you're over 16 years of age to go hunting. And that money must go on the ground. And as the former director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, I can tell you 98 cents out of every $1 goes on the ground out of that duck stamp money. But think about that, $1 in the Depression. $1 would have bought food for a family for a week. Beans were 4 cents a pound. Sugar was 5 cents, a dime for a 5-pound bag. Flour was just pennies a pound. A fatback. You could feed a family that was hungry for a week on $1. And yet they said, make us pay this $1 to go hunting. From that it went into, well, that worked pretty well. So in 37, they passed what was known as Pittman-Robertson Act, or the Wildlife Restoration Act. All of our predecessors did that to say, make us pay a tax on our weapons and our ammunition as we go hunting, and that money has to go back to the states then to help them manage. And today, the Texas Parks and Wildlife receives a large chunk of money, as well as each of your states, to manage their resources. My last year as the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, we sent out over $1 billion to the states to manage the resources as a result of the Wildlife Restoration Act, and then another one passed in the 50s, the Sport Fish Restoration Act, so that they could manage them. So that's called, by the way, the North American model for wildlife conservation. It means it belongs to us and we'll pay. We don't depend on the government to do it. We want them as a partner. We need them as a partner, but we accept our Aldo Leopold responsibility to be the citizen conservationist. So we moved on from there and we started working, and we started then in 37 as well, Ducks Unlimited. And the idea on the Beaverkill River is a fish camp, and our founders said, we got to find some way to make the ducks population greater. So we did start out looking at ducks as the main thing, and we still focus on the habitats around ducks. But we got started 82 years ago, but we sent all of our money to Canada because the science had just started to evolve that said this is where the birds nest. Oh, sorry, did I go too fast? Yeah, I did. So this is where the birds nest, so we want to try and take care of them. And it wasn't until the 80s that we started understanding science better, and I call it the round-trip ticket. We need to make sure that all migratory birds, and by the way, we have 100 million fall flight birds as a target, and we've exceeded that for the last 8 years here in this continent. And that's just the waterfowl. When you think of all the other migratory birds, the songbirds in your backyard, the billions of them that come down all benefit from the work that we do, then we needed to keep going. So we started as a membership organization after that. But I want to tell you what the real seed of the membership organization part is. The real seed happened right after World War II. Our returning veterans had seen the worst humanity that man could do to man. They'd seen the concentration camps, prisoner of war camps, the way that people have been treated. And when they came home with a vengeance, saying, we will never allow that to happen again, and we want to make the world better than we found it. We want to be a force that makes things better. And our veterans coming back changed Ducks Unlimited and made us start to become, instead of a few people writing big checks, we started creating the army of volunteers that we are today. And those veterans made it happen because they were the hunter conservationists that we all know about. And today, we still have far more volunteers than we have staff. We write paychecks for about 500 people at Ducks Unlimited. We have 56,000 active volunteers that put on over 4,000 events a year and helped us raise over $230 million last year for conservation. That's the kind of system that the active citizen conservationist can make happen. That's who you are, because you're there. You're part of that. You show up at our events and you help us make it happen. We have 2,300 chapters across the country. I noticed that you have about 3,000 of your districts, but we have 2,600 chapters that work all over and help us to get the job done. If you'll see that we are diehard about putting our money on the ground for conservation. 80 cents out of every dollar is guaranteed to go into our mission of conservation delivery and conservation education. Last year, and by the way, 2 or 3 years before that, we've been at 83, 84 cents every year, the money going on the ground or in conservation education. This is going to be an important point when I get to our campaign message here in a few minutes. We have 5 offices, 4 regional offices, and a Washington, D.C. office, as you can see where they're located, but they take care of the entire United States. I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention that we have 2 other Ducks Unlimiteds. We have a Ducks Unlimited Canada and a Ducks Unlimited de Mexico. And between those 3, we cover from the Arctic Ocean all the way down to the bottom of Mexico and have conservation taking place at all levels and conservation education. We have together, the 3 DUs, working with you and our partners, conserve 15 million acres across the continent over our 82-year existence. And those are primarily focused on grasslands and wetlands. And as you know, we can't get the job done without working with you. You may or may not know, I hope you do, that only about 30% of the fish and wildlife habitat in the United States is in public hands. While my really good friend Kevin Norton is here, and I want you all to really appreciate what he does for you. He's a great man, and he's helping us in all more ways than we know. So when you get a chance to talk to him, thank him. But they can't do it alone. We have to do it with it, because 65 to 70% of all fish and wildlife habitat in the United States is in private hands. So our mission is to work with you and all the other people that own that habitat. Because I tell our people at Ducks Unlimited, always remember, when the farm and ranch gates close on us, our ability to accomplish the mission is done. We can't do it. And that footnote in history becomes more and more real. It's in your hands that the real conservation delivery takes place. We are simply an instrument that helps you deliver it. You are the ones that do the conservation. Ducks Unlimited simply brings some expertise and ability to make it happen for you on the ground. But you are the change makers. You're the ones that make the habitat occur. We focus in different areas. We do work in all 50 states, but we look at the breeding, the migratory, and the wintering grounds. And for example, if you look over to the west coast there, the level 1 non-breeding is in California. California has lost 95% plus of its native wetlands. So when the waterfowl migrate down through there, what do you think they depend on to stay alive and keep that very healthy Pacific flyway population going? Rice fields. Rice and other ag fields that are flooded up. But rice fields are the surrogate wetland for us in a whole lot of ways. When you look at what happens when the river floods, when the river floods out and goes into those bottomland hardwoods that you know well, and the leaves have fallen off, and the water covers them. Those leaves are the food for the river and for everything else. They start to be decomposed by bacteria and fungi. They're eaten by microinvertebrates. They're eaten by macroinvertebrates. And then you've got all the rest of the food chain that comes in and feeds on them, including waterfowl, fish, all kinds of others. And it goes all the way up then and builds the entire ecosystem chain up to the predators on the top, which are like eagles and hawks and the other top predators. We have numbers from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that tell us when we work with you, put a project on the ground, that somewhere between 700 and 900 species benefit every project because you're creating that entire ecosystem. You're creating that entire aquatic going to terrestrial ecosystem and all of the species that depend on water and the food that they produce. Our campaign set out 7 years ago, we just closed it December 31st, to do the largest campaign in history for wetlands and grassland conservation. We set ourselves a target of $2 billion to raise between the 3 DUs continentally for conservation. Nobody thought we could do it. While I'm not at liberty because I have to wait till our own convention to announce it. I can tell you we met it easily, and we will have exceeded it. And when you go back and look at those numbers, remember 83% of all of that went on the ground or in conservation education, the very same things you want to happen. We work the same public policy areas that you do and have the same interests that you do. Again, I felt like getting up just saying ditto. We want to keep the soil on the ground. We want the farmers standing, making money. We want conservation to pay. It's not a bad word. Let's let people make money off working lands. When you farmers and ranchers and your partners help us put habitat on the ground and you get to enjoy it, so does everyone else. It provides benefits for everybody. And we need to make sure everyone understands that this is not a moral issue. We have 9 billion people to feed pretty soon. We support the more yield we can get off an acre, the happier we are. If you can find seeds that modify so that you can get a higher yield, we're for you. Why? If you can do that, you might not be forced economically to convert some other lands that might be better used to stay in habitat. We want the farmers to be able and the ranchers to be able to see a benefit from their heart and what they give. Nobody loves the land ever more than those who own it and work it. So we also work together to get the conservation provisions in the Farm Bill, and we think it's a great Farm Bill as well. We like the compliance part. We think a deal is a deal. We work hard to have our good friends on the ground be able to get the insurance, and we fought and lobbied to make that happen with you. And we also believe that we want the conservation provisions followed, and we want the health of the land to be the #1 objective that we're all after here. We go together to see our members just like you do. We do our Hill, our fly-ins, and we just had one, by the way, last week. So we're working with people, why? Kind of like, so what? What if we don't? What happens if we don't? As business people, and we are in business, we ought to always ask ourselves, what if we don't do this? So what? Well, right there's the #1 answer, water. I believe, and I have believed since about midway through my career with the Fish and Wildlife Service, that water is the issue of the 21st century, and wars will be fought between countries over water before the end of the century. When people are dying of thirst, when people are starving to death, they will go to war. And we need to figure out how to conserve both quantity and quality and help other people around the world learn from us how to do that. But water is the key issue of life. I can tell you that as an old catfish farmer and as a biologist that works wetlands and all the other aspects, and I've worked the deserts with Debbie out there, water is still key for everything that's alive. So we need to figure out how to use it wisely, and that's what we do together. And the water quality as well. We know that when lands are properly managed, when the water comes on the land and goes off the land, there should be very little difference in its quality. We want to improve it all the way down the coast. When you realize what we can help you do on the lands and what we've done together for a long time, we take areas and convert them at the landowner's request, by the way. We do absolutely nothing that we're not asked to do by the landowner. There is no such thing in Ducks Unlimited as trying to force somebody to do something. We work with partners, and they're always volunteer partners. But we try and change things to make them more productive all the way around, from the filtration buffers all the way to clean water ponds for your cattle tanks, to everything else. There is a way that if we work together, we can improve the water quality and hold on to the water quantity. And again, why do we do this? What if we don't? Clean water, we're talking about that and the issues there. Recreation, look, we all love to get out and enjoy life. It's part of the quality of life that we do. Wildlife, 700 to 900 species benefit from every one of our projects and out there on your lands. And by the way, it's becoming more and more of an economic profit maker for the landowner to be able to lease lands for hunting, especially for waterfowl and other birds. And then flood protection. We're right here near the Texas coast, and many people don't realize for every 2.7 miles a hurricane travels across emergent marsh, the storm surge is reduced by 1 foot. When I went into the Air Force in 1968 and ended up getting in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1969 to Keesler Air Force Base, Camille had just come through. And Camille was a Category 5 hurricane, same pathway, same strength, same everything as Katrina. But those antebellum homes in Biloxi and Gulfport were still there. All of the structures, they took some beating, but they were still there. Now fast forward to 2005 when Katrina came in. Katrina's same pathway, Category 5, went through there. It breached the levees in Pontchartrain. It blew the antebellum homes completely off of their foundations in Biloxi and Gulfport. If you remember, the only thing you saw in the news was the big guitar sign that was in front of the casino. It was the only thing left. Why? Why did that happen? Well, I'm not a geohydrologist, but I think I got common sense. We lost 40 square miles of wetlands every year between the two. So those wetlands off the coast of Louisiana were not there to slow the storm and reduce the storm surge anymore. Everything we do has an impact, and it's not just on social, it's not just on the environment, it's on economics as well. Everything that we do together is going to make this country stronger. Everything that we work to educate people for is going to continue conservation into the next generations. We work alone on nothing. Well, I have to take that back. We have one little program to where if a piece of property is going to be destroyed, paved over, et cetera, and we can't work with the landowner, then we'll go buy it. We call it our revolving lands. We'll buy it, we'll hold it for 3 to 5 years, put a perpetual easement on it for ranching, farming, or whatever, and then sell it. Other than that, we do over 500 projects every year on an average across the country, and we work with people like you and other partners to do everything. We do nothing alone. Everything we do is to try and leverage a dollar. Our average under the North American Wetlands Conservation Act is to take $1 of federal money and leverage it to on an average of 3.2 to 1 of private and other monies coming in. We want to work with others. We are stronger together than we are apart. We are more influential, and our voice is louder when we're together than we are separately. And it's so important for us to remember that we're in this together. This is our earth. It is our responsibility. We have stepped up over time. Our predecessors have. It's now our turn. We have to step up. And together, we're going to make this happen, and I have absolutely no doubt we will succeed, because I talk to some universities, and I see the young people. I think it's in good hands if we can just reach them. They want to. They want to be part of this. It's our responsibility to do for them what someone else did for us. Today, I think, is the beginning of a stronger partnership between NACD and Ducks Unlimited. And I'm very, very proud to be here with you. Very, very proud of the history that we've had together and the history we're going to make. Thank you all very much.
I have to find my spot. I got so engaged listening to Dale that I forgot what I was supposed to do next. You can obviously see there's a lot of synergies between what Ducks Unlimited do and what NACD does. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask President Brent Van Dyke to join us on stage for a signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between NACD and Ducks Unlimited.
This signed agreement demonstrates the commitment both NACD and Ducks Unlimited share in enhancing our natural resources. Following the conclusion of this session, Dale will be speaker at the speaker's booth in the Conservation Expo next door to answer any questions that you might have for Dale or Ducks Unlimited. The purpose of this MOU between NACD and Ducks Unlimited is to establish a framework of cooperation between the organizations to maintain enhanced productive wildlife habitat on private lands. This collaboration is very exciting because it not only solidifies the work we've already begun to accomplish in getting conservation on the ground, but it provides both entities with unique ability to promote, to implement conservation practices on the local level. We're excited for what the future holds for both our organizations through this MOU.